Hey y'all, welcome to Keeping Up with Christy. I'm Christy, and on today's video, I'm going to be showing you 2 days worth of prepping for Thanksgiving Day. Last week's video was a couple of recipes. I showed you a side dish of hash brown casserole and apple pie. If you did not see that video, I'll link it down below in the description and you can go and watch it after this one. This is the rest of our prep. We did it over the course of 2 days. So today's video is also a collaboration with my good friend Rebekah over at Magnolia and Pine. Over on her channel, you can see what's for dinners, grocery hauls, cleaning motivation, how she's hanging out and spending the day with her kids. She's got a lot of boys. She's just a real sweet mama that Neil and I have gotten to know through YouTube, and we have so enjoyed spending time being able to talk with her and just getting to know her and her families through her YouTube channel. So we know that you'll want to go over and see what she's also going to be doing for her Thanksgiving Day prep. So her channel and her video will be linked down below, so make sure you go over and give her lots of love from Keeping Up with Christy. So on day one, we got started with cooking the bird. So we have a 16-pound turkey, and they're already on sale at really good prices. We got this one for 68 cents a pound at Walmart. So what I do is I just get everything taken out. You see over there in the green bowl, I have the neck and the innards parts. Those came out while we cook it. And then I am just stuffing it with onion and celery, and I top the bird with salt, pepper, and poultry seasoning. Those are my 3 seasonings I will use throughout the whole 2 days of prep for everything. We do not keep the skin on it. If we were going to be serving this on the day of and carving it at the table or anything like that, then you'd want that pretty presentation, but we're just getting it off the bone, of course, because we're going to be freezing it. It's just easier for us to serve it out of a crock pot. So what I do is I start my oven off at 450 degrees, so it's preheated at 450, but when I stick it in, I turn it immediately down to 375, and I set my timer for 3 hours and 30 minutes. Mine didn't end up cooking that whole time. It only took 3 hours, so you want to go back and check it periodically throughout the day. But set your timer because you're not going to need any more. The way I do it is like 13 minutes per pound. So 13 minutes times however big your turkey is. So while the turkey was in the oven cooking, Mom started making cornbread. Now, Mom doesn't have a recipe. I can tell you she used about 1.5 cups of cornmeal. This is like for a half of a cake of cornbread. 1.5 cups of cornmeal, 1/2 cup of self-rising flour. She puts a little salt in it, about 1/4 cup of oil, an egg, and about 1.5 cups of milk. And the reason why I say she doesn't use a recipe is literally she just grabs stuff and throws it in that bowl. We got white cornmeal. We ordered yellow, and then Walmart substituted it for white. So it looks really white, but it doesn't do anything different to the taste. So we just stuck it in there with the bird and let it cook as well. It took about half an hour at that 375. So this is about halfway through the cooking time. And you can see it just browns and crisp up really nice, and it's going to be looking good. And it ended up coming out, like I said, at 3 hours instead of 3 hours and 30 minutes. The little thermometer that they stick in there had popped. But whenever I'm cooking a turkey or chicken or anything, I don't trust those little things like that in a big turkey. So what you want to do is stick it in your thermometer into the meatiest part of the thigh, the thickest part, and not hit the bone, and stick it in there. You want a reading of 165 or better. And so this one was registering right at about 170, so I knew we were good. And I just tinted it with foil and let it sit there, and you let the juices go back in. There's Neil. He was so excited to give a taste test, but he can't have any more. And so Mom, after it cooled, she's always great about, she'll come in and debone everything for me. So like I said, we don't keep the skin. Neil actually ended up getting to eat a lot of that skin that night. He thought that was great. But we're throwing it into the crock pot, all the bones from the carcass, plus the turkey neck, that we did not roast. I'm just throwing it in there as well. Throwing in onion, celery, and I'm using 2 stalks of celery, 1 whole onion, and I'll salt, pepper, and use poultry seasoning on that as well. And then I'm going to cover that with water. It takes about a gallon or a little under, but you can put it in your crock pot. I've shown this before. This is how we make bone broth, or your homemade stock. So you're going to need a lot of stock for Thanksgiving. If you make your turkey ahead of time, you can actually go ahead and use those bones and make lots of stock for your gravy, for your dressing, to heat your bird up in when it's time in the crock pot, whatever. So it just sits overnight, and I have my 2 gallon size Ziploc bags full of turkey, and those are freezer bags, so they're ready to go into the freezer. So the next day when we got up, I came downstairs. Mom is downstairs. It smelled like Thanksgiving Day in our house. It smelled so good for 2 days in our home. Like, no candles required. It just smelled like Thanksgiving. So that broth was nice and just rich, dark. So we went ahead and started our next thing, which was getting eggs cooked. We use eggs in our dressing and eggs in our gravy. So we're using the Instant Pot. We use the 5-5-5 method, which is put your eggs in with a cup of water, you hit the egg button on it, and it cooks for 5 minutes. Then you let them natural release for 5 minutes, and then you put them in an ice bath for 5 minutes. So perfect eggs every time. So I'm just showing you there. I've got about almost a gallon's worth of broth out of that turkey, and then we just put the turkey over to the side, let it cool, because Mom will actually take the rest of the meat off. There's always meat left on those carcasses, and you can use that meat in your gravy. At least that's what we do. So now the eggs are coming out, and they just go into their ice bath for at least 5 minutes. You can leave them there as long as you want till you're ready to use them, and then they'll be perfect. You don't have any of that kind of gray stuff around the inside of the yolk. I hate that. So this, make sure you don't ever have it. Instant Pot makes the best hard-boiled eggs. So now I'm moving on to helping Mama prep the stuff for her dressing. So we want a pan of dressing. We don't do stuffing here in the South. We especially like to do a pan of dressing. So this is how we make ours. The first thing I do is I cut up a whole onion, and I get some butter melting in the skillet, and I do 2 stalks of celery, and basically you just chop it and drop it. Get all that chopped up and dropped in there and let it soften up. So you saw me, I was putting salt, pepper, and the poultry seasoning in with the veggies. So I added that in. I'm getting that all stirred up and just sauteed till it's just softened. Mama is starting on the bread mixture. We use 2 boxes of stovetop stuffing, chicken flavor, and then we had made biscuits the night before. We had breakfast for dinner, so we made extra biscuits and saved those. So she put 2 biscuits in with the stovetop stuffing mix, and then she's putting in her cornbread, her half a batch of cornbread that she made. So once you get all your bread items in there, then it's just a matter of mixing in your wet ingredients. And so I'm also going to chop up her hard-boiled eggs. We put hard-boiled eggs in there. So Mama learned how to make dressing from her mama. But then when she married my daddy's mama and my mama's mama, they both made their dressing pretty much the same way. The only difference was hard-boiled eggs. Her mother-in-law put in hard-boiled eggs, and her mama had never done that, but my mom loves hard-boiled eggs, so it's just one way that she adapted her dressing then to do it. So it's a combination of both of them that way. But I chopped up her hard-boiled eggs for her, and then she's also adding in her broth and her raw eggs. So she ended up using 3 raw eggs. At first she put in the 2, and then you see her adding in the broth, and she says basically you just don't know exactly how many you'll need of the eggs or the broth until you just get in there and start, mushing it up with your hands. So the only thing I can tell you is this: the way we make our dressing is one rule of thumb is you can't have dry dressing. And in order to not have it dry at the end of the day on Thanksgiving Day is to make sure it's nice, and I know some people hate the word moist. It's got to be, nice and wet when you put it into that pan. So it needs to have that kind of consistency. And then, of course, we label everything. It's got to be baked at 375 for 40 to 45 minutes. We thaw it out the day before, so it'll be ready to go into the oven, and it's going to be delicious. It always is. All right, so next is gravy. So Mom and I, we have our certain things that we're in charge of making. So she'll make the dressing if my aunt's not coming and bringing it, which she's not this year. So Mama was in charge of the dressing. She does the sweet potato souffle or casserole. We call it casserole. That's coming up next. And I'm in charge of the gravy every year. So this is my gravy recipe. Now, it's a chunky gravy, I will tell you that. So we chop up the onion and the two stalks of celery. I'll get that out. And I salt, pepper, and poultry season that. And I saute that in the butter. Then you got to throw in your flour. You know, gravy is pretty simple. It's equal parts. So I'm using a half a stick, quarter of a cup of butter. You can use about a quarter of a cup of flour. And you want to get that flour in there and let it cook up and get a little bit of color to it. Once that has cooked, then you add in your stock. So I put in 4 cups of that homemade, lovely, rich, thick turkey broth that we had cooked in the crock pot all night. So that got put in there, and then it just starts to thicken up. The other thing that helps it thicken is hard-boiled eggs. So we put 3 hard-boiled eggs in our dressing, and we also put 3 hard-boiled eggs in our gravy. The yolk of the egg will, help thicken up your gravy. Then we also take all that turkey that we get off the bones, the last of the bones that came out of the stock and had cooked all night. There's more turkey meat that just is falling off of those bones. So Mama goes through and she got the whole bowl full, and we put that in the gravy. Now we'll freeze it, but on Thanksgiving Day when it'll be thawed and then we'll reheat it, we will add some more broth to it because it'll be nice and thick. And so it will actually stretch out a little further. It'll make more gravy than what we had there, but that's our beginning base for our gravy. Now Mama is making the sweet potato casserole. I will have her recipe down below in the description as well. She has been making this, I don't know, since I was a teenager. We don't even make sweet potato pies anymore because we have this, but we don't save it on the dessert table. We have it with our dinner. And so we were never ones for marshmallows on top of sweet potatoes and making it that way, but we love this one. So it's topped with walnuts is what we use. You could use that or pecans, but we do the walnuts, the brown sugar, a little bit of flour, and cinnamon, and you mix all that up and put it all over your sweet potatoes that have butter in them and sugar and eggs. And so you just layer it. You put your sweet potato mixture on the bottom. You top it with that lovely nut topping that's nice, and it's going to caramelize really good because of the brown sugar. And then you top it with some more butter. So you pour that melted butter on top, and then we freeze it just like that. And then it's going to come out again, thaw it and cook it. And we put the time and temperature and everything on the top of the pan lid, just like we do everything else. So we don't even have to go back and pull our recipes. So check out what all we have. All right, let me show you real quick what we have in the freezer out here in our garage. So for Thanksgiving, we have our turkey that we made, and it's frozen now and ready. We have the gravy that will freeze. We have a half a gallon of turkey broth. That will be what the turkey will get put in once the turkey is thawed. We'll put it in a crock pot and cover it with the turkey stock, and that will be what the turkey heats up in to make sure it stays nice and moist. And then we have the dressing, 1 pan of dressing, and we have 2 pans of sweet potatoes. There's 1. I do not stack them on top of each other until they're fully frozen. These are the hash brown casseroles that you saw on my first Thanksgiving video. If you haven't watched that yet, I will link it down below in the description so you can go and see it. But I put those together. Once they're frozen, you can stack them on top of each other, save space in your freezer. There's that other sweet potato casserole. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 apple pies. Also on the first Thanksgiving video. We won't eat 4 apple pies, but I made extra and I'm going to give them to some friends of ours for their Thanksgiving Day meals. So there you have it. Our freezer is stocked for Thanksgiving. We're all set.